Welcome to the channel. Its chief main goal is to help more people create freedom in their life through success in a career in technology sales or sales in general, in the pursuit of personal growth. And one of my favorite aspects of the channel, and probably the most valuable aspect of this channel, is the inspiring interviews portion, where we get to bring on amazing guests like Anthony Iannarino. Correct me if I said that wrong.
No, you got it right.
You know, when you overthink it and you're just like, don't say it this way, and then you say it that way. Anyways, such a privilege to have him today. He's one of the top sales thought leaders of our time. He's got some incredible books that we're going to dig into, like The Lost Art of Closing and Elite Sales Strategies. And hopefully this conversation serves you all to help you be more successful in sales, to create more freedom, more joy in your life. Anthony, thanks so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, it's my pleasure. So let's just dive right into it. I wanted to get your thoughts on how a career in sales can develop character and make you a better person and help you create a better life. Loaded question, but take it away.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things to say about that. I think for a lot of people, there's some confusion about what we do in sales. And I think that a lot of people believe it's a self-oriented profession. And in a way it is, but it's self-oriented in a really powerful way. So if you're other oriented, it means that you go out and you help other people get results that they couldn't get without you. So that's what we're really doing, is we're really other oriented. But you have to be somewhat self-oriented to be a good salesperson, because as the Buddhists would say, you're perfect just the way you are, and you could use a lot of improvement. And that's sort of how you figure this out in sales. Like, it's a very complex kind of set of competencies that you need. And I don't think that people pay a lot of attention to some of the competencies that actually are necessary to be good at sales and necessary to helping other people. So the first thing is, how disciplined are you? Like, can you will yourself to do the work that you need to do? In a lot of other roles, you don't have near the autonomy that you have in sales, especially if you're in sales and you're working from home. Like, there's no one there. If you don't prospect, no one knows what you're doing, right? They have no clue. So if you're not super disciplined, then sales is going to be hard for you, because whatever you do today is a deal that you win 90 days from now, or whatever the timeline is. So if people are undisciplined, they're not going to do very well. It's also it's one of the few jobs that you have where you ask somebody to help them and they tell you no directly. Like, I could help you get better results. Not interested. Like, so what a lot of people say is something like, I don't like the rejection. And it's like, well, you weren't rejected. They rejected a meeting with you. That's not rejecting you personally. And those kinds of things start to really stack up. So if you're undisciplined and you don't have a great attitude, and you think that somebody's harming you by telling you no to a meeting, which of course you've never been harmed that way, it's never been true. You need a whole bunch of things like persistence. Like, if you want to be successful in sales, you're going to persist. It took me 7 years to win PetSmart, and I persisted because, like, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm prospecting anyway. Why not just call them and keep bothering them until they eventually say yes? Things like resourcefulness, like, how do you figure out how to solve problems that you haven't encountered before? All of these things start to stack up. So one of the things that sales does for you is it shows you all of these gaps in your competencies that you have. And then you have to start doing something about those. And the best salespeople start to recognize that a lot of this is character traits that you can develop over time. And those character traits are very, very useful for you in every other part of your life, like every other part of your life. If you want to be good with people, sales will help you do that. If you want to make more money, it will help you do that. If you want to make a greater contribution while you're here on planet Earth, sales will help you do that. But you have to work on yourself quite a bit to be good at it.
Can you talk about the most brutal rejection you ever faced? Because people are afraid of rejection. Like you said, some people think, oh, they rejected me. They didn't take my meeting. But that's not true rejection. You've gone through true rejection. Tell us that story.
Well, it was a very long time ago. I was 17. My girlfriend broke up with me. And when she broke up, she said, I'm breaking up with you because you're a loser and you're always going to be a loser. And my mom thinks you're a loser and my sisters think you're a loser. And that's why I'm breaking up with you. And I was heartbroken for about, I don't know, 16, 18 minutes, something like that. And then I saw Debbie, and I liked Debbie quite a bit, and I got over it. So it was a brutal rejection at the time because it was so personal. But none of your clients know you well enough to reject you personally, because they don't know you well enough to reject you personally. All they're saying no to is the fact that, um, whoops, I lost you. Are you still there? Okay, sorry. You are not being personally rejected. You're just having your what we would call a value proposition, whatever it is. It's either an ask for a meeting, or it's an ask for the next step, or it's an ask for a signature on a contract. But none of those things are actually going to harm you. Like you're going to move on to the next one, and it won't matter.
Yeah, it's crazy that our subconscious brain, which developed in Caveman Dates, that was basically a don't get killed device that really protected us, also keeps us small these days and sees these invisible threats like rejection and treats it like a woolly mammoth chasing us. And it's just very limiting. So it sounds like you're the type of person from an early age that didn't let rejection, even a brutal personal one, hold you back, and you bounce back quick. And yeah, that's pretty powerful. So I think anyone out there who's been facing rejection lately, it probably wasn't to that degree. So hopefully that encourages you. And
Listen, she wasn't wrong. Like when she said that, from where I was, I'm playing rock and roll at night, and I'm hanging out with my friends. So like she wasn't wrong about the trajectory at the time, but then that my trajectory changed. So, but yeah, she talked to me right before she left the earth, but and she told me she was sorry for that, and she didn't know. So that's how those things go.
yeah. So we're going to also talk about two of your top books. And I know you have more than two, right? But uh,
4.
you have four. We're going to talk about the lost art of selling or of closing, excuse me, and the 10 commitments you need to win to drive sales. We're going to talk about elite sales strategy, your new book, and the concept of being one up and coming from a place of authority. I'm excited. So audience, make sure you stay to the end for that, for all those nuggets. However, before that, I wanted to understand your journey. Like, how did you come up with such a clearly defined approach to sales? It's so thoughtful. And I was talking to my buddy who read your book, The Lost Art of Closing, and he said to Chris, ask that question. Like, how did Anthony come up with develop this type of thought process? Like, what were key moments that shaped you?
Well, probably the person that I have the most admiration for as a sales thinker would be Neil Rackham. And Neil Rackham wrote a book called Spin Selling. It was published in 1988 by McGraw-Hill. It's still in hardcover. So it's many, many years. That book is still in hardcover. It's still on every shelf in Barnes and Noble. They sell a lot of them on Amazon. And it was a good piece of work. Not his best piece of work, by the way, though. So if you're a sales nerd and you read sales books, Major Account Sales Strategies was a better book, in my opinion. Now, it wasn't the one that made Rackham famous and rich, but it was the one that was the most helpful for me. In 1993, I read that book. So I picked it up a little bit later than when it came out because I wasn't paying that much attention to sales at that time. And in the book, right before it gets to the model of spin, which is situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and need payoff questions, that wasn't the most interesting part to me. I mean, that was all good. I really liked implications because it was why change. So I liked that a lot. But the 3 pages before you get to that model, Rackham describes the research that he and his team did when they looked at 34,000 sales interactions. And what they noticed was that salespeople who were successful got what he called an advance, which means you're not going to close an enterprise deal on the first call. You're not supposed to close it on the first call. And he realized that all this always be closing, always be closing. Yeah, if it's transactional, yeah, always be closing. Like there's no reason. And Rackham's example was you're at the store and you have a camera at the time. This is 1988, so you don't have an iPhone yet.
Yeah.
And if somebody says, "Could you use some film?" It's $2. That's a good thing to do. Like, there's nobody can be hurt by buying that film. There's nothing bad that it would happen. But if you ask an enterprise buyer to buy without having gone through the conversations, it's not good for them because there's too much risk, too many things that still have to be talked about. And what he said was that there was an advance, and then there's something called a continuation. And the continuation is what a lot of people accept. So it's something like, Chris, I loved everything that you had to say. It was a delightful meeting you. Please reach back out to me maybe in a quarter and we'll have another conversation. Now, I said all those nice things to you so that you will go away and feel like you actually have a shot, even though that's not true anymore, because if you were going to get another meeting, you would get it right now.
Yes.
But what they're saying is that you didn't create enough value for me, and I'm going to let this go because I need somebody else who can give me more help than you gave me. And as I read that, I thought, oh, so here's what you do. You link together conversations. So how do you link those conversations together? And I spent a lot of time on that and less time on the question structure that Rackham gave us. And I was concerned about how do you go from one meeting to the next meeting? And all I did was worried about that all the time. Like, how do I do this? So what I started to do originally, we used to have these things called Franklin planners, and it was like a big binder that would have your calendar in it and all your notes and everything. And what I would start doing is I would lay my calendar open on the desk while I was talking to the client. And then at some point at the beginning, I would say, at the end, I'm going to ask you if we can take this next step together. And then at the end, I would have my calendar open and I would say, I have this exact same time open next week. Are you available at that particular time? And I've got my calendar already open on their desk.
Wow.
So I would get another meeting. And then I started to pay attention to like what happens that gets me in trouble. Well, a lot of times I could win. This is before you were selling for sure, and you would have been very young when I was doing this. But there was a time where you would go to a decision maker and you would do a deal with an individual that didn't bring the rest of their team in to the conversation, because that's the way we sold a lot at one particular time. But what I figured out was when all the people who are going to have to work with me find out that we did this, they seem to hate me for causing a change to happen without getting their consent or having any conversation with them. And so I started to figure out I have to talk to them and I have to get this person to let me go talk to their team. And so I started trying to figure out like what's the value prop for them? Well, the value prop for them is that I get to understand what their team really needs. They see me out there on their floor and they like me a lot better because I went and I asked them what they wanted from me and things got better. So I just started stacking these conversations up and I wrote them down and I taught them to my teams to say there's a number of things that we have to do if we want to be successful. And then after I wrote The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, I knew I was going to write the book with my version of Rackham's advance, but I actually laid out what those 10 commitments might be, even though you might have to switch some of them out. And it allows us to do something that we need to do now, which is try to take a non-linear conversation and try to make it as linear as we can, which means if we have to go back and forth between conversations, that's okay. But at least I have some idea what we still need to get done.
So I'm going to link The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need along with your other books too. I said that right, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, because I haven't read that one. So I'll put that in there for the audience to check out. I love that name, by the way. And it's very fascinating to hear your evolution, how you're thinking and how you're so passionate on solving this specific problem of the transitions, as opposed to Rackham, you said, was looking at the questions and things like that. So definitely a big contribution to the sales community, because, man, the simplifying and organizing the process can be a huge part of the sales battle. So did this book evolve into the lost art of closing? Because, you talk about winning 10 commitments. It's obviously very structured, but maybe we could dovetail now into the lost art. I'd love to hear about that. If you talk to the audience about, what it's all about conceptually, and maybe we could dig into the commitments too.
Yeah, there's a couple of things about that book. I knew I was going to write it when I wrote the first book, and I had already told my publisher at the time that I was going to write this book, and I pitched it to them when they actually called me and they asked me if they could talk to me about writing a book, and I'd already written the Only Sales Guide, but I was going to self-publish it because I thought they can't do anything for me. They're not going to sell any books. And it's true, they don't sell any books. You have to sell them yourself. That's how it works. But
quick side note, how do you sell books as a top seller? How did you do that?
You have to, the thing that people get wrong is they think that they're going to write a book and then they'll get an audience. And it doesn't work that way. First you get an audience and then you write the book. So it goes the other way. And the reason that Portfolio reached out to me is because I had an audience and they wanted me to help them promote the second challenger customer.
Oh, interesting.
So they were looking at me and they're like, you have this big audience and you get all this traffic, but you don't have a book. And I'm like, yes, I do. And they said, well, where is it? We can't find it. And I'm like, it's sitting right next to me. I mean, it's going to be published in January.
Wow.
And they said, what's in that book? and I told them, and they're like, I said, so no, everybody hates this book. Like, they hate it. And I don't want to talk to you about it, because I'd already showed it to a couple publishers and they're like, why would you ever put self-discipline in a book? Everybody hates self-discipline. And why would you have a sales book that has the word caring in it? And I eventually said, you've never sold before, right? And the publisher said, right, I never have sold before. And I said, I know. Or else you would know that you have to be other oriented if you want to be successful. And anyway, they said, how many books are you going to sell? And I said, I'm going to sell 30,000. And they said, how'd you come up with that number? And I said, that's how many my friends sell. And they said, okay, so that's kind of a test to see if you're crazy. If you go like, I'm going to sell 1 million copies of a sales book, they're like, no, we can't work with you.
Oh, interesting.
You're delusional. You're not going to sell 1 million copies of something like that. That's very rare. Not only in sales books, just generally. Anyway, I said, listen, you have a lot of opinions about my book. I said, instead of giving me your opinions, read it. Tell me what you think I need to do, and we'll do the second book together. And I didn't hear from them for about 6 or 7 days. And then I got a note with a 3-book deal. And I signed a 3-book deal with them and did 3 books with Portfolio. So that's how that happened.
Wow. I'm glad I asked you about that. And another example of how sales can help you even like sell a book or sell a publisher. And I love how you focused on character and values like caring and being other oriented. That's really powerful. So, but yeah, back to the track we were on. Would love to again hear about the evolution of the lost art of closing and conceptually and the commitments.
Yeah. So the first thing that happened is I realized a long time ago that the sales conversation is nonlinear. And I recognized that before a lot of people did. It's just not what you see your sales process on a slide that starts with, targeting, qualify, discovery, solution development, presentation, proposal, pricing, negotiation. It just doesn't go in that straight linear line anymore. And clients are bringing people in and out of these conversations, and they drop out. Sometimes they come back right away. Sometimes new people come in. Like, there's all these things happening. And I realized, like, if you don't have a structure like the one that I was working from, which is like, what conversations do they still need to have? And then how do I give them a value proposition for that meeting? Because that's what I was trying to figure out. What's the value proposition for the meeting so the client can say yes? Because I know what I want, but they have to know what they get out of allowing me to do the things that I wanted to do with them, which is like, let's talk about how much you can invest. Let's talk about who needs to be in the room. Let's talk about what the right answer is going to look like, and all those conversations. And I had written them all down, and I'd been using them for a very long time. And I knew I needed to write the book because there's a couple things in that book that are important. And sometimes I say things in a way that causes people not to really like how I say these things. But the first rule is control the process. If you don't control the process, or if you don't influence it, then people will disappear, and you'll have deals that are in your pipeline that have been dead for months because the client dropped out. I mean, and that happens over and over again. I don't want them to ever drop out. So if you can keep linking the connection between one to the next, like if we do this, then we'll be prepared to do this. And this is how it's going to help you get the best decision and get the best results. So you're selling every single meeting. While you're in a meeting, you're selling the next meeting, and you create value in the first meeting. And if you create enough value, then they believe that you're going to create value in the next meeting. And so I wanted to link these together. But the rule outside of control the process is the trading value rule, which means I have to tell you what you get out of the meeting so that you will give me the time to have that meeting. And this is where salespeople go horribly wrong, even from the first call. The first call is, I'd love to tell you about my company. I'd love to tell you about our solution, tell you how we're helping people like you. Totally self-oriented. There's no value proposition in that conversation, except you're going to bore me to tears with a slide deck that has a picture of your company's corporate office on it or something. Nobody needs that. They need help getting better results. So you have to be consultative now. And that means that you have to teach the client what they need to know to be able to get the best results possible. If you can't trade value for the meeting and you don't understand why that meeting has to happen in a way that the client can say that would be valuable for me to have that outcome, then it's hard to get those commitments. In that book, I actually included sample language of conversations that I they're real conversations that I have, but I sort of disguised them. And I tried to keep them on one thread so you can see sort of a deal as a deal goes through there. And you can see the language. And the reason I did that is because I don't think people have enough good language to have great client conversations. And the better your language, the better your conversation. So that was the evolution of the book. I published the only sales guide in October 2016. And I published the Lost Art of Closing in August of 2017. So we were working on a very, very fast pace at that time.
Wow. And it's interesting what you say about language. Have you heard of the book? It's a small book, Exactly What to Say.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Because one of my mentors is a professional speaker, and he knows the author, and he's like,
Phil Jones.
yeah, Phil Jones. And so I just started digging into it. But is that kind of in line with what you're talking about, being careful with your language, or like, what are your thoughts on that book?
Phil was not as B2B as I am. So I think it's right. And I think directionally it's right. And it's some of it's a bit of a tie down, like a lot of people don't know what tie downs are. So I'll probably just tell you what that means in case people don't know. It's a question that you ask that causes somebody to be locked into an answer. And if you say something like, are you open-minded to looking at some opportunities that might help you get better results? There's nothing wrong with asking that question, but it's hard for somebody to say, Chris, I'm super close-minded. Yeah. Like I'd take no new information in because I know everything already, and there's no reason that you should even try to teach me anything that might be useful to me. They can't say that. So you sort of locked in the right answer, which gives you a pause and a minute so that you can start trying to give people new information. So I think that that's right. I just think that it's a lot more complicated in B2B. There's a lot more things that you need to be able to talk about successfully than you do in a lot of other types of sales.
That's a really good distinction, that B2B, which is mostly the audience here, B2B sellers or people who want to break into B2B tech sales. It's helpful for them and us to understand that distinction. It's very complex. And so obviously you have 10 commitments to navigate and manage that complexity. Can we walk through the 10 commitments, go at the depth that you think is appropriate, but just it'd be great. And I will link the books, and I encourage everyone to buy this book. I read it, had a big impact, but I found out about it through my buddy Joe, who read the book and was at Oracle leading a team, and they had a meteoric rise to be the #1 performing team in that business unit and closed the largest deal in history. And Joe has gone on now to an individual contributor role and almost made $1 million this year. So I talked with Anthony. I told him I think he needs to send Anthony commission checks. So that's the type of impact this book has had.
We're going to invoice him soon. Just let him know.
Exactly.
If you're watching this, Joe, you're getting an invoice.
So just know that, guys, if you get the book, like, you're going to be wildly successful, but there will be cuts, but you'll make a lot.
I should have a contract in the back of this book.
That actually would be so crazy. Anyways,
there's 3 books that I wrote before I got to this one, but the first one, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. When people sent me notes, it was, not only am I a better salesperson, I'm a better father, I'm a better husband, I'm a better person, because of the character traits at the beginning of the book. The third book, Eat Their Lunch, is, the notes generally sound like this. I thought I was consultative, but now I know I'm not consultative, and I have a lot of work to do. So that book showed people something that they hadn't seen before.
We'll put that in there too, by the way, Anthony. So
what's that?
I'm glad you mentioned that. We'll link that book as well. I want to make sure we link all the books.
When the law started closing, all the mail that ever comes to me about that book says, I make more money than I used to make. That's what it says over and over again. I get so many notes, and the notes are always about money. One guy sent me a note and said, I just bought my wife a beach house. And I'm like, I way undercharge for this book. Like, I'm way undercharging. This book should not be a $25 book. Apparently, if a guy can buy his wife a beach house, it's pretty good.
Unbelievable.
So the sort of twist on these is that the first commitment is hard, and then the next one tends to be easier, and then the next one's generally more difficult. So the first one is the commitment for time. And why do people not want to give you time? Because of the trading value rule. You didn't offer them anything that they go, well, that sounds like a good use of my time. So if you say, I'd like to talk about my company and our products and how we help other people, people are like, I'm washing my hair today. I don't even have any hair, but I would still say that if I could get rid of a salesperson, because I don't want to waste my time. It's the single non-renewable asset that you have as a human being, is your time. So you don't want to waste it with people. If you get that one, then the pivot to, let me share with you some of the things that we see working, some of the things that we know are not working right now. And even if there's not a next step for us, you're going to have a good idea about what you might want to start looking at with your team as you go into this next quarter. And I'm giving them the promise that there's going to be value in the conversation. So that one's easy anyway. People like exploring change. They don't like committing to change. So that's the third one. So when you get to the third commitment and you ask, Chris, if this is a problem for you and you said it is, are we going to be able to get the resources, including the money and the time and the energy and effort from your team to be able to stand something like this up if it's the right thing for you to do? And that you have a tough time. So this is the commitment, like, are we really changing? When you ask salespeople, when do people commit to change? They say when they buy, when they sign the contract. No, you don't want to go through all that conversation and then find out at the end, like, yeah, we were just exploring. Yeah, I don't want you to be exploring. I want you committed to the change. And if it takes me a couple more steps to get you there, I'll do that. But I don't want to go all the way through the process to find out you weren't serious about change. So that's why it shows up so early, is you have to test. Is it worth us going through the effort to try to do these things? After that, you get to what people really like, talking about what are we going to do together. And that's a creative endeavor where you're working to say, what's the right thing look like? We could do this, we could do that, which is going to work better. They like that a lot. So that one's easy. And then you get to 5, and 5 is consensus. and everybody hates consensus because somebody's going to come in and be the devil's advocate. Somebody's going to try to derail it, especially in large companies where there's a lot of jockeying for position, so you don't want somebody to get a win if you're trying to beat them to the next role. So you have all this stuff. And then there's people who just are difficult. And you're like, why do we have to bring these difficult people into this conversation? It's terrible. All they're going to do is make a mess. But sometimes in some deals, if you don't do that, you're not going to win the deal. So you have to figure out, like, is it worth doing? And it probably is in B2B for the most part. After that, you have to talk about money. That can be difficult, but I find it to be really easy. I mean, you're asking them to make an investment in better results. So I never have any problem or fear about that. You shouldn't either. If you have the higher price, you have the highest price because you create greater value. That's it. After that, you're going to give them a review of the solution because you never want to give anybody something that they can say no to. So you want them to validate it and say, yeah, this is the right thing. It is going to work. I'm not presenting anything until they already tell me it's right. And I'm working that whole way to get to the right answer. If it's not the right answer, then you have to do something to make it the right answer before you hand anything over to a client. So that's part of it. But when you do hand it over, you get to the nasty, foul commitment of resolving concerns. And this is the one where they say, Chris, I'd like to talk to my team. We'll do that in the next 2 weeks and we'll get back to you. Now, when somebody says, well, I'm not really sure how that's going to work, that person has no ability to answer that question. I'm not sure that this is going to work the way that we think it is. And what if it doesn't work? And they start having all these concerns. The one person who could resolve those concerns is not in the room. That's you. Unless you insert yourself into the room or stay at the end of that conversation. Can I have the last 15 minutes? Because your team should not agree to this unless they're 100% confident. And if they're not, I will be available for you so that we can have a conversation and make sure that they get the answers that they need to be comfortable moving forward with us. And that's it. So you have to do that. Now we get to the actual asking for the business, which is the easiest of all the commitments. There's no reason to say, if I could give you a 15% discount, would you sign today? Like a terrible thing to do. Like you just built all this value and then you go like, well, now I'm going to just say that value really wasn't all that much value because I'm willing to lower the price for you to sign a contract. You want them to sign the contract because they want the better results and you want to keep your money so you can invest in those results so you can be successful. And then you can go on and continue to sell more to this particular client and their friends and family and people that they know. So that's the right way to do it. The last one, though, is also difficult. And that's the one where sometimes they have to pick up their end of the stick and do the work. And they'll think they bought the solution from you and it's going to do the work. So if you're a tech salesperson, all I can tell you is that when the pandemic hit, a bunch of SaaS people reached out to me and they said the same thing. Everybody's canceling our contracts. And I said, why is that? And they said, because there's a pandemic and everybody's tightening up. Yeah, but why are they canceling your contract? And then you find out the truth. They weren't using it. Okay, well, they're canceling it because you made it easy, because you didn't make them do the work. You didn't get them all the way across the line. You got the contract, but they're not executing. If they're not executing, you can expect to lose that client. So the 10th one is about making sure that they do the work and that you do the work and that they get the result. Otherwise, they're going to move on with someone else in the future. And that's all 10.
Wow. Thank you so much for taking the time to go through that. Extremely helpful. I'm going to rewatch this myself. And again, I want to encourage everyone to, get the book and dig in, because there's a lot of details and goodies you're going to get by digging in fully to the book. Now, my dog has been barking like crazy. I have her on mute. I'm just going to tee up a few more questions. And then I wanted to finish up talking about elite sales strategies, but I have a couple I can't help but ask you in between, and I'm going to mute myself and let her go potty. But one thing I wanted to tee up for you is, there's a lot, but can you talk about tech sales, your view? Part of this channel is like, hey, it's a wave, right? And I know selling will never go away, but cloud computing's been booming. But what's your view on tech sales? Do you think it's different than, it's probably not, but than other forms of selling. Talk about your thoughts on the tech market.
I'm not a technologist. I like technology, but I'm not a technologist, so I don't know as much as a lot of other people do about technology. I do know a lot of people that, like Oracle, that I've done work with, and SAP and things like that. So I'm familiar with what they do. I think it's more complicated than people think it is. And I think it's harder than people think it is. And there's a lot of technology, and you're competing with other technologies. So that there's a lot of people that want to buy a lot of things. I've seen sales stacks that are sometimes $5,000 per rep, in some places, because there is so much tech and there is so much competition. So I think that it's harder than people think it is. And the reason that they're attracted to it is because there's also a way to make a very good living selling tech if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, then it doesn't really matter. Like you're not going to make a lot of money no matter what you do if you don't figure out the sales part of it. I think it's important. I think it's helping us, but I wish that there was a little bit more of an understanding that technology is one way to improve something. Sometimes, but there's also the human part. So what I was just describing when the pandemic happened was that the human part never actually happened. There was no behavioral change. So they bought the software, but there was no behavioral change. They didn't start adopting it and using it and becoming reliant on it. And because that didn't happen, it was very easy to just get rid of the technology. And that's what they did. And because they didn't have a good structure for execution. So I worry about that in all sales, but in tech, it's really easy to buy something and not use it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really made me think about what I've sold in the past at, Oracle, and then I was at Google Cloud, and now I'm at a consulting firm. And one thing I thought of too is how important it is to hit on your step of understanding if the client has the resources to actually do the thing. I have become much more mindful of our engineering resources and how expensive they are to
Oh
the
yeah.
company. So it's like you just spent all this engineering time, like you got to be careful. Like,
On somebody who was just exploring.
yeah, so I think that was really powerful, and especially that final one. Like we don't think about the post sale and ramping a customer up, especially in the cloud computing space where it's consumption, and there's so many tools. It's really important to hold their hand and help them get the most out of it. So a couple more questions before transitioning to elite sales strategies, which I'm really excited about. We talked a little bit prior to this about Jordan Peterson, who we both appreciate, and how it's so powerful if we can learn to speak and think clearly and communicate clearly. And could you talk to that concept, kind of flesh it out for the audience? I thought it was a good insight. And also like how your writing practice, like what that looks like and how it helps shape your thinking and your ability to communicate. Because sure, it'd be helpful for more people to do something like that.
One of the things that Peterson said that made immediate sense to me, because I'd been doing it long before I knew who Peterson was,
Yeah.
but not that much before I knew who he was. He said, if you can read, write, and speak, you're a dangerous human being. Yeah, because you can think. That's it. So if you can read, write, and speak, you can think, and that's the way that we sort of structure our knowledge. It's one of the ways that we do that. All of those ways actually help us do that. So you can read a book, you can write, you can teach. So if you can speak out loud and teach, I promise you, you're learning while you're teaching. The best teachers are the best learners. They're always trying to learn, and so that's generally true for me. I dabbled with some writing when I was younger. I was a songwriter, so I liked words. Yeah, so I did a lot of songwriting, and that's kind of more, that's closer to poetry in a way, and it's closer to fiction in a way, because you're actually writing something, and you're trying to communicate something that's everybody, like whatever your favorite song is, it speaks to you. Why it speaks to you, I have no idea, but it does. So that's kind of what happens. But when I was 42 years old, I decided I was going to write every single day of my life
Wow.
for the rest of my life. And so I decided to do that then, and I changed my alarm clock from 6:30 to 5 a.m.
Oof.
So I give myself 90 minutes. And now I get up at 4 a.m.
Dang.
So I give myself the whole morning.
You're not tired at all?
I'm tired at 9 o'clock. Yeah,
Okay.
bedtime's early for me. Sometimes it's 8:30 because 4 o'clock's early, and that's an early time to get up.
That is so early.
And then
Yeah.
I deplete like any glucose in my body by my brain sucking up all of the glucose as I write for hours in the morning. And I've done that now for 12 years, writing every single day, except for 13 days or so when I was in Tibet and I didn't take a laptop with me because I didn't think I was going to have any ability to do anything like write. But it turns out, even on Mount Everest, where I ended up, uh, they had great connectivity. Like I had greater cell phone. I mean, first off, there's just nomads out there, so there's not a lot of traffic on their Wi-Fi. But it was China Mobile was great all the way from Lhasa all the way to Mount Everest and back. It was actually better service than I get in Columbus, Ohio, where I live. And other than those days, I've written every single day, and I published a blog post every day.
Wow. And so I want to link your blog as well. Could you share it for the audience?
Yeah, it's thesalesblog.com.
Okay, got it. We'll put it in the description, thesalesblog.com. Every day for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Man. And it reminds me, I don't know if it was Seinfeld who gave
Yeah.
advice that, write a joke every day, even if it's crappy, or write jokes.
Yeah. He's got the red X's on his calendar.
Yeah. So it sounds like that has really helped you find clarity of thinking. Like,
Yeah.
what would you say has been the biggest, if you had to sum up the biggest benefits of this writing habit?
It's organizing what you know, and it's exploring what you know. And it turns out that you know a lot of things that you don't really know that you know. And as you start writing and your brain goes to the trouble to try to solve the problem that is writing a sentence that's true. So you're trying to write a sentence that's true. I mean, and Peterson would say that too. Like when you're writing, I have
Yes.
Christopher Hitchens behind me who has two rules as a writer. One is always tell the truth, and second, don't be boring. That's a second rule. So
Those are good
those are
rules.
the two that I try to follow. And
Yeah. Imagine if we all spoke the truth. It'd probably be a little bit painful, but would save us some pain in the long run. And yeah, I realize I love what you said. The second piece, like I'm summarizing, but be entertaining. It really is our responsibility, not in the audience to find it entertaining. So one other question before diving into elite sales strategies. You mentioned when we spoke previously about rapid decision making. I was just curious, like what does that mean? You're full of all these insights. You have such a philosophical approach to life and sales. So I'd just love to hear you expand on that thought.
I think we were talking about that because I had a webinar coming up with Jeff Shore about rapid decision making.
Yeah.
And we had a really interesting conversation, but probably the most interesting part about that was he's talking about, like, because we have this uncertainty and leaders have to make a decision, they just have to make a decision at some point. And probably the most interesting part was, well, if they do this one thing, then what? It's like, well, they can't just do one thing. Like the first thing that you have to do, you're not making a decision if you don't have more than one thing you can do. You're just acting. Like that's not a decision. You're doing it because that's the only thing that you have. So one of the things that you have to do to make a rapid decision is to decide what are your options? And
Yeah.
so if you don't identify, I'm going to say 3 or 4 options that you could try, then you're not really making a decision, because the decision would mean I have to have some consideration of, is this going to be better than that? Or if there's only one thing that you can do, I mean, if the building's on fire, you don't need to try to go through your options. You're going to get out of the building as fast as you can, right? That's the only thing that you need to do. You don't need to make a decision.
Yeah.
You just need to act. And that's what we do when there's chaos. When there's chaos, you just act. But we don't live in a time of chaos, even though I promise it feels like that to people. And I'm sure that they're anxious, and they are some ways threatened by all of these things that are going on in the world. But we're in a complex environment. And a complex environment means you have to try to figure things out and try to get some certainty in a place where there's not certainty. And that's why this is so hard for us. We're used to, like you said, something about a woolly mammoth, a saber-toothed tiger, your cave person history, from evolution, go back millions of years, at least millions of years. You're supposed to have the stress of escaping from a saber-toothed tiger. You're not supposed to have this low resolution stress
Mm,
that never goes away. Like you're just always under this amount of stress without having the release when you actually escape, because you just can't escape from the environment that we live in. So it's the wrong kind of stressors for us. We're good at like stress, it's over, I'm better. Instead, it's just constant stress. And part of this is just there's so much news coming at you full time. Like all you're doing is getting bad news that's intended to agitate you and make you feel something so that you stay connected to the news, and so
yeah.
that you think that other people that are your neighbors are your enemies somehow. So that's not a good thing for us.
No, and you're right. There's this chronic stress, which talk about an impact too to how we show up in sales, in our relationships, and in life. So, I guess okay. One other added question before, again, next thing I promise everyone is elite sales strategies is how do you manage stress in your
I
life?
I write. I mean, that's it. And I had a Zen master that I did some work with, and he told me about a Zen master that didn't meditate. He just wrote, and it's the same thing. Writing is doing what meditation does in some ways, is that you take whatever is in here and you put it on a screen in front of you, and now it's not in here anymore. You're looking at it, so now it's objectified. And so you're looking at an object instead of it being part of you already. So you remove it and you give yourself distance. And that's how I deal with it. I write things down.
Just putting my puppy in her crate. That's really interesting. I never thought about that, using writing as a form of meditation. And I wonder if the gym also could be, like a form of getting out of the brain and into the physical body. But thank you for sharing that insight.
You wear the body out enough that yeah, you can. That's a good way to do it too. I mean, if you're really angry and you're upset, take a run. As soon as you start getting all that oxygen into your body, you're not going to be mad anymore. You'll start breathing again, and then you'll feel better.
Yeah, and again, you hear my talking about stress. My puppy's going crazy. She's just being a little diva, but we're in this. And one of my takeaways is I am going to start more of a writing habit. I encourage everyone else to do that too. And you do seem really zen, by the way. Like I could tell, like you're very present. So clearly it's working. So without further ado, can you talk a little bit about elite sales strategies? How is it different? It really seems like it's a game changer. Can you talk about it conceptually and then dig into a little of the meat and potatoes as well?
I think the reason that people were attracted to this concept is because of the actual concept that caused me to do a keynote on this idea. And the idea is the nature of the relationship between the salesperson and their client. And my thinking on this has been pretty clear for a long time. And that was, I mean, you can take that back to the Only Sales Guide, where the last chapter is about leading your client, because you're supposed to be leading them. They're not supposed to be leading you. How could they lead you when they don't know anything? Like, now they know a lot of things about their side. They don't really know what they need to do to get the best results. So the general concept is something called being one up. And so in every time there's two people talking, generally one person is one up and the other person is one down. Okay, so that's not saying that one is smarter than the other. It's just saying that I have different information than you, and you have different information than me. So I know more about this buyer's journey that you need to take and how you should pursue it. And I can give you the information that you need to make the best decision to get the best results possible for you and your company. Okay, so that's the part that I know. I'm one up, but I'm also one down. At the same time, I'm one down because I don't know your business well enough. I don't know what your team's prepared to do right now. I don't know if you've got the resources. I don't know if it's the right timing for you to do something like this. I have a whole bunch of things that I need to ask questions about so that I can give you the best advice and get you the best results. So that person's one up as it comes to talking about their situation, even though I probably already know their problems. I probably already know the solutions. But what I have to do is transfer my knowledge to them so that they can see what I see. So I spend most of my time reading and studying things that allow me to have a lens that was unavailable to me until I found something that shows me something that I couldn't see before. That's what you're really doing when you're selling, is you're showing somebody how to make a decision, which means I have to give them this clarity. Like, I have to give them this view through a lens that's clearer than the lens that they have. So in tech, let's say you sell ERP. They made a decision to buy ERP 10 years ago. So that would be, at the time we're recording this, it would be 2012. Anything change in technology in, say, the last 10 years?
A little bit.
A little bit. Yeah, quite a bit, right? So their assumptions that they made were right at the time, and they're wrong for this time. So I have to erase some of those assumptions, replace them with something that's accurate today and that they should consider if they want to make the decision that they need to make and if they want to get the best results possible. So this is how we transfer our knowledge. So there's information disparity. I know something you don't know. But if I share it with you and I help you recognize something about yourself and about your situation and about what your choices are and about the factors that you need to consider, then you're better prepared to make the decision that I would make for you if you ask me to make it for you. So I want to teach them how to make that decision the way that I would make it. This is what's called consultative selling. And so people say, well, consultative selling, I'm a consultative seller. I'm like, well, what makes you consultative? I ask really good questions and I never pressure the client. That's not what consultative means. Like, you have to go to definitions. What does it mean to consult? It means I'm going to tell you how to run your business. That's what it means. So if you hire a consultant, they're going to come in and teach you why you have the problem. They're going to tell you how to think about the problem. They're going to tell you what your choices are and which one's probably going to be the best for you. And most salespeople's advice and recommendation starts and ends with, buy my solution from me and my company. That's their primary advice and their primary recommendation. But there's 100 things that you could recommend. Like, let me tell you when it makes sense to bring somebody into this conversation who's already opposed to making a change. Like, I can give you dozens and dozens of lists of things that you could talk about that are way better than talking about your product or your company, than things that would actually create value for the decision maker who's trying to make a decision. Do you know why they call them decision makers? Because they make decisions, right? It's not that hard to figure out.
That's a good question.
And if you think, what do they need help with? Making a decision. So you go like, we're great, you should love us, buy our stuff. Not all that helpful. But when you say, look, there's 4 models that people basically pursue Our model is different than the others. And if you don't know what the different models are, I'd like to share them with you so you can understand that low price thing that you're looking at is a really good deal. But if you have money to pay more, then you don't have to get all the concessions that come with that particular model, like long wait times, poor customer service, probably not going to work for all of your clients the way that you need it to, and you'll probably have to redo a lot of work. So you can teach people how to make a decision, or you can just tell them we're great. Here's our Why Us slide deck that we can share with you, and trust us, our solution's the best. Now what you've done is you've made 100% certain that the client thinks that you're a commodity, because every salesperson that walked in and sat down and talked to them said, our company's great and we have the best solution. It's better than anything else that you can buy, just like everybody else said. So I do believe, in fact, that your company is the best company. And I do believe that your solution is the best solution, just like your competitors. That's it. So we're differentiating in the exact same way as everyone else is trying to differentiate. So if you don't want to be treated like a commodity, don't act like a commodity. That's the first thing that you should know.
Yeah. I felt, hearing that, if I were the customer, I'm like, wow, this is really nice. It's like when you go to like a great restaurant, 5 stars, and you just get the greatest service and they're going to walk you through the menu options. I'm pretty indecisive myself. I like to defer to what's the chef and do this and that. And I had that feeling. And I think okay, here's the models. I'm going to walk you through. You're empowering them to make a good decision. So
yeah,
really,
that's called triangulation strategy. It's in the elite sales strategy. We walk you through how to learn to do that, to have that conversation.
Wow.
And I learned to do it because I had to beat much larger companies. Like when my company was $4 million, I was taking clients away from people who had $17 billion businesses. And I was explaining to clients, they have 4,000 offices. They're very big. 3,999 of them will never touch your business at all. And you're paying for their real estate and you're paying for their marketing budgets, and their decisions are being made in Sweden. So if you need a decision faster and you need somebody that's on the ground, and all of their offices are going to be able to touch your business and make sure you get these things done, there's a better way to do it. And so I would just start explaining, they're great, they're huge, we love them, we'd like to be them when we grow up, but you're paying for a lot of things that are going to have no impact on your business, and you just have to learn how to win. And that was me learning how to win by saying, like, all these things that they think are great because they're big, none of them will have an impact on you, but me being 4 miles away from you and stopping in and making sure that you're taken care of will. And
Wow.
yeah,
That is so good. You put that so well. And, I took a leap from Google monster company to a startup as one of the second salespeople and founding sales members. And we're growing, but it's really a challenge, hunting, winning new logos. And I really would love to leverage this type of conversation. I think a lot of people out there who are at startups that are grinding, smaller organizations can really apply this. Now, are there any other nuggets?
large companies can too. I mean, you can go the other way and say they have a lack of resources, and you're not like you can if you don't if you can't argue both sides,
Yeah.
you're not a good salesperson. Like you got to argue, you got to be able to make their argument too. Their argument is under resourced, not going to have the right amount of money to invest in getting you these results. You can go either way on this. Like it works for everybody if you know how to do it, but most people don't do it at all.
I'm tempted to ask you how you'd sell ice to an Eskimo.
I wouldn't. I would buy ice from an Eskimo, right? And then I'd bring it back to Arizona and sell ice to people who actually need ice. That's the easy way to do it. It's the entrepreneurial way, right?
I love that, man. A look in the mind of a brilliant entrepreneur right here. I want to ask you, how would you sell me this pen? You know that classic one.
I think that's funny. I think what they're trying to do is get you to recognize that the person has to have a problem to buy a pen. if I was asked that as somebody who was applying for a job, I would say, why are we selling a pen? If we have a million pens, then I can help you sell those pens. Like I can definitely help you sell a million pens, but I can't sell you one pen because neither one of us is going to make any money if we sell a single pen. Why would we do that? Let's do something much bigger than that. Like it makes no sense to sell a pen. Let's sell all the pens. Like that's a better way to do it. Like what are you talking about selling a pen?
I'm so glad I asked you. And but
What's the commission on a bit?
that is, if someone said that in an interview, like, because a lot of this audience, there's some of this, the portion of this audience is trying to break into tech sales, and they haven't had a sales role. Imagine if they said an answer like that starting out, like the people would be like, "Whoa, this person has some business acumen right there."
Yeah,
So
somebody asked me once, like, how would you sell a brick? And I'm like, you can't do anything with a brick except throw it through a window. Like, why don't we get a lot of bricks and we'll make paver backyards for people or something? Like, you have to think bigger than that.
yeah, that answer you gave reveals so much more about your vision and your business acumen. It's so funny. So, um, as we're wrapping up, I mean, I'm really grateful to have you. I would for hours want to interview you, but any other nuggets, final nuggets to extract from elite sales strategies? And again, sorry for Bella. I'm going to mute this, but any other final nuggets on the book?
I think that probably the most important thing for people to understand is that you have to be one up. And one up means I know something that they don't know, and I'm going to lead them and I'm going to teach them and I'm going to help them be successful. If you don't feel like you're in that position, I would say all of my books will help you, but this one will give you a vision, as to how to behave as a salesperson. And that one seems to just resonate with people very quickly. They get it very fast, and you sort of know it, but I don't know that it's ever been said the way that I've said it, because the way that I've said it seems to resonate with people.
So the call to action is check out the book. I've been checking it out myself to figure out how to get to that place of one up, because that takes work, and this will give a roadmap to get there. So I will link all the other books. I wanted to ask you, maybe it's the penultimate question. I always say this is the final question, but I've been doing this a lot with my guests. I've been asking, how do you live a good life? It's such a big question, but you're a very thoughtful person. You've been very successful. I bet you'd have a good answer. So if you take it where you may.
The average person in the United States lives to be 78.8 years old. And that number's going down. And it went up for a while because people quit smoking. That was like the number one reason that people started living longer, is they quit smoking. Right now, the reason it's going down is suicide and fentanyl. I mean, those are the two major causes that are pushing that number down. So it's 78.8. But if you take that category out, it's probably a little bit longer. But I did the math, and I have an app on my laptop called Countdowns. And I gave myself to 78.8 from my birthday to my birthday in that year where I would be 78.8. And it's 4,108 weeks. That's the total. So that's not very many weeks. And I have maybe 1,300 of them left, maybe 1,300 total. And when you start to look at that, now some people think it's morbid that I know how many weeks I have left. I also have days that I have. And I look at that countdown thing just to remind myself, like, you're here for a short time. You're not here forever. You can get some bit of immortality by writing books because part of you's left behind. Videos of you will be left behind. So some part of you will still remain, but you're gone. And if you don't recognize that you have a limited time, this is a one-time deal for you. Like, you punch your ticket, you don't get another ticket. So whatever you want to do at all, like whatever contribution you think you want to make, whatever you want to do as a profession, whatever you want to do in your life, you have to start doing it. Like, you just have to do that. So I do what I'm called to do, and I'm unwilling to not do something that I want to do. because I only get this one shot. So you get one shot, and then you have to take that shot because it's all you really have. So you can tell yourself, well, I will do that some point in the future, or I'll do this thing some point in the future. You might not have a future. You don't even know. Whatever you want to do, just give yourself over to it and do it. And that's it. So I don't know, like don't let what I call the drift. The drift is not just like drifting. Napoleon Hill has this thing about drifting, so that's not the drift I'm talking about. I'm talking about Werner Erhard's drift.
Oh, wait a second. I did Landmark, like a bunch of their programs. Have you gone through it?
No, but I've read a whole bunch of Werner
Okay.
Erhard. So,
Amazing. Okay.
but I know his structure well, and I know where he got it, and I know how he developed it, and I'm aware of that.
That's cool.
He's unknown. You're lucky that you know who he is. Most people have no idea because that was like the early 70s when he did that work. But that drift is all the things that are around you, like your parents telling you you got to go to college, your people telling you that you have to get married and have children, and you have to do all these things that like that's just the current of society pushing you in a direction. And then you at some point have to recognize I'm a single entity and I don't have to do anything that any of these people think that I should do. And the fact that they think it's the right thing to do may be right for them, but it might not be right for me. And so you have to get out of the drift. Earhart talked about it like you're in a boat and the waves just keep pushing you in these directions. You have to pick your own direction, and you have to fight against that drift and say, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do. And then that's going to make you happy. Like that's the only way. Like you can't try to meet other people's expectations instead of meeting your own. You're all you have. And if you're not happy doing what you're doing, you should go find something that makes you happy. If you want to do something, do it. And so I've lived that way since I was 12 years old. Like I was out of the drift. I liberated myself at a very, very young age to do whatever I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. Not making good decisions at the time, but still liberated. Liberate yourself. That's the best way to have the life that you want. I would also say reading and writing and thinking. Those are good things to do if you're here.
Wow. Amen. There you have it. Sales guru and philosopher, Anthony Iannarino. I might have butchered it. I'm sorry, but correct me. Did I say it right?
Iannarino.
Okay, cool. I'm overthinking it, but man, that was profound. That was beautiful. And my question is, how many weeks do you have left?
Close to 1,300.
How are you going to use those 1,300 weeks? Like, what are your top? And I promise
on the bookshelf, right in this direction that I'm pointing that you can't see. I have to go this way so you can see. It's over here. There's a shelf of books by Peter Drucker, the greatest management thinker of all time. He wrote 54 books. He published the last book that he wrote when he was 93. So I'm thinking I only have 4. I actually have 5. The 5th one's already written. It's going to be out in September. But I've got like 50 more books I have to write. And I already have a contract on the 6th book that will come out. Well, it's due in December. So I'm going to do what I do, which is teach, learn, speak, write, be an entrepreneur, create businesses, help people get better results. That's it.
Well, thank you for your generosity with your time, with the ideas that we're looking to amplify through this conversation, and for giving your gift, because by doing that, it's an example for other people. It's an inspiration to do the same thing. I certainly feel inspired. So thank you so much. I am linking all of the resources that people can get their hands on in terms of all of your books, your blog. And if there's anything else, by the way, let me know. Anthony, is that cover it, or is there any other resources?
Plenty. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And hopefully down the road, we'll have another conversation around more books. Obviously, there's many more to come. And to the audience out there, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this video and got value out of it, which I feel very confident you did, make sure to give the like button a love tap. The YouTube algorithm loves that. And we'll show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. Make sure to subscribe for weekly sales and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks. Happy selling and happy living. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I got a call coming in 2 minutes, but thanks for having me on. I think we sent you a book.